Howdy ho ho, my good humans, how the hell are you doing? This is Unnecessary Rambling. I'm Brandon Sylvia. I appreciate y'all for tuning in to talk about some Game of the Year contenders. We're finally in that time of the year where the GOTY Contenders are rolling in. I have a couple that I have been playing that I'm really excited to talk about. One that I did not expect to be anywhere near as good. Actually, two that I didn't expect to be anywhere near as good as they were. And then, of course, a couple others in here that are more obvious Game of the Year contenders that we all kind of suspected they would be Game of the Year contenders. But listen, I got to kind of take my L. Early in the year, I said that I thought 2024 was going to be a light year, and I think the back half of 2024, for right now at least, does look pretty light, but good lord, man. We've had some heavy hitters early on in the year, and I haven't played every big release that's come out this year. So hit me in the comments down below if there's anything that has released in 2024 that has really kind of elevated itself amongst the rest of the 2024 releases, and then something that you think is worth shouting out, worth putting on people's radar that I may have not played and may not cover here on the channel. Always worth shouting out those games and giving more recognition to the good shit out there. All right, but enough of the rambling, and let's begin with the big dog of the episode, the game that has, for anybody wondering why there's been less content on the channel as of late, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is to blame for that. Pretty much every minute of my life that has not been, working or sleeping or eating or doing like the necessary things for existing has been devoted to playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I just wrapped up the main story. There's still so much side content left out there. I really didn't mess around with Queen's Blood much at all. I still want to go back and play some of the mini games more and do some of the side quests and, go off and fucking do the damn exploring for Chadley and get the different summoning creatures and shit. There's so much content in this game, and I think that's a good place to begin this conversation, is that Final Fantasy VII Remake was my first time ever playing a Final Fantasy game, and I always just I don't know what you want to call it. I never really looked at those games and took them seriously as narrative experiences. I was just like, I don't know. It seems kind of childish, silly. But man, Final Fantasy VII Remake totally blew my expectations out the water. A much harder hitting narrative than I ever expected. But it was more streamlined. It was more concise. It was more to the point. The narrative felt more consistent in the first game than Rebirth, in my opinion. But it's not, I shouldn't even say consistent. Rebirth is just so vast. There's so many options and possibilities and so much to do and see and so much to just explore, because it's much more open worldy than Remake Part 1. And I think as a video game, like as an entire video game, I would say it's better than Remake Part 1, because there is so much there for you to do, and so much of it is fun. And it's one of those weird experiences where after, I put the controller down, I was like, is there anything I could really cut there? Like, everything felt necessary to either the development of the story, the development of the characters. And that's the thing. Rebirth really feels like a kind of like a Mass Effect 2 buddy companion movie, or a buddy companion narrative that's playing out, and it's really trying to dive into those. It's not companion quests in the very strict sense where you can avoid them, like you have to do these in the main narrative, but it is very companion quest centric. A lot of the story buildup is revolving around getting to know Barrett's backstory a little bit more and seeing how it came to be where, he lost his arm and all the events surrounding that. You're getting to know all of these companion characters' backstories much more in depth than you did in the first game. And I guess I just finished it, so I'm still trying to separate myself from Rebirth and analyze the experience as a whole. And now that I'm thinking about it, I think that would be my main takeaway, is this feels more like you're playing through a story where you're just really digging into these companion characters and trying to fully flesh out their, plot development individually for each of these characters. But in doing that, I feel like the main story of Shinra and Sephiroth, I feel like it kind of gets pushed to the background for the majority of the game. And also, like I was talking about earlier, when you're going off and doing your fucking chocobo goddamn Crash Team Racing, Mario Kart Racing style events that are like fully fleshed out mini games with, the ability to drift and get these different power-ups and nitrous boosts, and you're doing these big ass jumps, and it's a fully fleshed out mini game. And like I was talking about earlier with Queen's Blood, which is essentially a card game that you can play for hours on end just playing that, and then getting to certain destinations in this world where you're going off and you're in some sort of carnival style setting where you're participating in like shooting mini games or photography mini games, or when you get to the gold saucer and you have like full on shoot 'em up games that you're playing that are fully fleshed out. The motorcycle game from Final Fantasy, or it's not a game, it's in the main narrative in Final Fantasy VII Remake, but that comes back as its own mini game. And it's just every town, every location that you're getting to is so vast, and there's so much to do and so many little games to interact with, like going and doing the crate bashing game that almost feels like you're in some sort of Mad Maxy desolate world. And there's these cool mechanics where you're having to hit these power-ups and go and you're trying to slow down time by hitting these certain clocks, and you're trying to get to, you're trying to rack up your points throughout bashing these damn boxes. And it's so silly, but so goddamn, like, it can be so addictive trying to level up. And there's just, I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is there's so much in here that could really, really steer you away from focusing on the main story, and it's so easy to kind of get lost, and it's so easy to just get like hyper fixated on getting the highest rank on all of these different mini games, because they're so goddamn fun and so well thought out and fleshed out. But the cool thing is that you'll have sections of the main story that are directly tied into the narrative where they still incorporate the mini games, like the one with the drill parade. You get this drill team assembled, and you're going around and trying to assemble this drill team, and you are performing these like quick time events in this drill dance routine, and you're trying to get a high score on that for a narrative reason that I'll avoid here. Or like the one where you have the damn dolphin, and when you hit the beach balls, the dolphin is like happy and he speeds up, and I don't know, man, like, this game's so fucking charming. It's so fucking cute. It's such a fun video game. But with that said, I still do think the consistency of the main narrative and this is more of an individual problem, and I'm a main narrative guy. Like, I like to really zone in and focus on main stories, but it was hard for me to focus on that main story because there was so much fun shit to do. And like I said, I think I'm around 40 hours into the game. I could imagine easily dumping another 40 hours into it because I didn't really focus on the summons. I didn't really focus on a lot of that shit with Chadley and going and doing the research for the materia upgrades and shit. And I could imagine that on its own could be like its own 20-30 hour adventure that you're going on. So there's so much here. So if you are one of those people who want just immense amount of content in your game for your damn $70 price tag, this game has you covered on that front. For someone like me, I'm not as interested in just having a map that is littered with shit to go and do and go and explore, which it's not like littered to the point of the Ubisoftification, which I hate using that as like a derogatory immediate catch-all term, but it's kind of universally understood what that means, what the Ubisoft UI and map design looks like. And Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is definitely not that bad, and pretty much all of the side quests that I went and fucked around with so far, which granted once again is not a ton, but pretty much all of the side content that I went and tried to track down and mess around with felt much more meaningful, and definitely much more meaningful than the side quests in Final Fantasy 16. But I would be lying if I said at times I was like fully keeping up with what was being laid down in terms of the main story, just because of how easy it was for me to get distracted with all the different fun shit to go and do. And I guess, bringing up Final Fantasy 16, since that's really my only comparison point, would be Remake Part 1 in 2020 and then 16 in 2023. Those are the only Final Fantasy games I've ever played before this one. And I know a lot of people say you should play the original Final Fantasy VII from 1997 before jumping into Rebirth and Remake. There's just no chance in hell I'm ever going to do that. No chance I'm going to play through a 100+ hour turn-based PS1 RPG. Not going to do it. So if I miss out on some lore or deeper understanding of the story because of that, so be it. I'm not gonna cry myself to sleep at night over missing out on some of that context. But in comparison to Final Fantasy 16, I think I do like the combat more in Final Fantasy 16. Rebirth leans even more into the turn-based elements than Remake did. Remake felt much more like I could kind of get through every battle just, hacking and slashing, and Rebirth really leans into wanting to, get specific with your materia, how you slot in your materia and your choices there, and your kind of ability upgrading systems and your synergy abilities that you can combine with different characters, where you're holding block and you can use these different abilities and program these different abilities to attack the enemy, and you can find their weaknesses, and you're spending a lot more times in the menus in battle in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which, once again, I'm not a big turn-based guy, so that's not totally up my alley, but it wasn't. I was pretty much fine with it throughout the majority of the game. I will say, though, there were definitely a couple bosses that I really struggled with and ended up dropping the difficulty to easy to get through those, and I do think, once again, that probably has a lot to do with my lack of turn-based gameplay knowledge. But for the most part, I will say this is still pretty damn accessible to somebody who's not a turn-based game fan, who's more of an action game fan. Like, you can still get through it playing it like an action game if you're just willing to try to learn a little bit of the systems, a little bit more of the strategic elements, and not just relying on your parry, your block, your evasive maneuvers, and then you're hacking and slashing. And I love how many characters are introduced here and how fleshed out all of their combat systems are. Like, I really loved playing as Yuffie and Red 9, where Yuffie, you could throw like her little ninja star thing at the enemy, and then you could essentially like teleport to the enemy to retrieve that ninja star, and then you can, like, say there's a floating enemy, a dragon, or whatever the case may be, a flying enemy, you can throw that shooting star, teleport to him, and then you're right there, and you can do a bunch of like up close damage with her. And then Red 9 had the what was it called, the side splicer or some shit, where he jumps up in the air and does a bunch of these like 360, he's rolling around and just constantly doing these like super quick circular attacks that inflict a good amount of consistent high volume damage to the enemy. So if you're really wanting to get their stagger damage up to where they become in this extremely vulnerable, kind of unable to block predicament, and then you can just rack up damage points there. And that's really where you want to go in, and you use a lot of your strategy in those moments, where you want to save up your limits. You get these special limits. It's kind of like a finishing move for these characters, and you really want to save those up for when you got that enemy downed, and you can just stack up those limits. So if you want to use Cloud, Barrett, Tifa, and like Kate Sith or whoever, if you want to combine all their limits together, or a few of their limits together, and do just like this massive amount of damage to the enemy all at once while they're in this completely vulnerable state, like, you're gonna rack up more damage that way. And it is fun to try to get into the systems a bit more, and that's where I was able to appreciate how the turn-based mechanics flow and function into this action game setup that I really do love. You know, the hacking and slashing and this new era of Final Fantasy. I love that. And it was cool to tinker around and try to learn the turn-based, the nuances with these turn-based systems as well in Rebirth, because I just felt like it was much more predominant and in your face in Rebirth opposed to Remake, and definitely opposed to Final Fantasy 16. Final Fantasy 16 is like, you know, diet DMC, which once again, I'm not saying that in a degrading manner. I think I like Final Fantasy 16's combat more than Rebirth, but I think I don't know, I kind of respect Rebirth's combat a little bit more. It's definitely it's much more difficult across the board than 16. Once again, I think so, because I don't know, I think pretty much everybody will find Final Fantasy 16 easy as hell. But as a guy who has played action games his whole entire life, Final Fantasy 16 is like light years easier than Rebirth, and even, you know, Remake as well, which, like I said, Remake kind of felt more akin to 16 than Rebirth to me. But once again, I haven't played it since 2020, so I could be forgetting things. But yeah, man, it's fun as shit going in and assessing these different bosses and, you know, finding out their weaknesses, finding out these different enemies' weaknesses, and then going into your spell setup or to your ability setup and seeing if you have anything that can inflict that damage, that specific damage that the enemy is weak to. And then as you're upgrading, you know, you have this big skill tree, which for the most part, the upgrades are consequential, they are meaningful, but in terms of adding like variety, well, they do add variety, but in terms of adding like new fun mechanics to the active elements of combat, I don't think they do a ton there. But you can get like these abilities that don't cost any MP, and say you got this new, you know, heat wave ability that inflicts fire damage, and you have a boss they are weak to fire damage, and you can just kind of fire that thing off one after another, and you know, have really no negative effect on your MP. Those things are really where the skill tree shines, in my opinion, along with, you know, adding new synergy abilities and obviously 3+% damage points to normal attacks and all the shit that you would expect from any of your upgrading trees. That is in place as well with Rebirth. But I will say, in terms of the combat, as fun as the boss fights were, I thought some of the standard enemy design that you would just kind of run into these spontaneous battles that just seemingly pop up nonstop as you're traversing the open world, that did get a little bit tiresome when you're trying to go from point A to point B, and you're like, okay, well, I probably need to do this to level up my characters and level up my party, and you're spending a lot of time getting in these somewhat meaningless battles out in the open world. And I don't know, that in general, I liked how linear, when Final Fantasy 16 was at its peak, when I was just loving that game so fucking much, it was more when the game was on rails and just getting you straight to these big ass, you know, cinematic, awesome ass boss fights, and just these crazy, the scale of some of the moments in Final Fantasy 16. It felt like it was able to go above and beyond because it wasn't as vast. And I just think I prefer that design a little bit more. I prefer seeing a crazy spectacle on maybe a smaller, slightly smaller scale, which, I mean, Final Fantasy 16 is fucking huge as well, but there's nothing in Rebirth, in my opinion, that is anywhere near as impressive, especially in terms of boss design and shit. There's nothing in Rebirth that's nearly as impressive as Final Fantasy 16, in my opinion. But world building, on the other hand, I definitely think I would have to give the point there to Rebirth. I mean, when you see the gold saucer for the first time, it's fucking crazy. And I don't know, maybe that's a location spoiler, so if I'm running gameplay or whatever, I'll try to, you know, include that there, that this might be a location spoiler. But I don't know. I don't know if people really... That's the weird thing. You really never know where the line is with spoilers. But the gold saucer, man, when you're walking around this environment, it's just this fucking neon kind of Vegas-y, futuristic sci-fi sort of mix-up. It's so fucking sick, man. Just every piece of interior design in this location is mesmerizing, absolutely mesmerizing. And just how active and dense this location feels. You're going around and it's bustling. You're seeing people all over the place. There's so much to do and so much to interact with in different shops where you can go and buy things. It's crazy how dense that is. And there's multiple different spaces throughout Final Fantasy VII Rebirth that give you that same feeling of like, holy shit, they accounted for so much while building, while designing this one specific location. So yeah, in terms of scale, spectacle with boss fights, I would go Final Fantasy 16. In terms of scale and spectacle with the world building, I would go Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. I think that story-wise, I do prefer kind of the darker slant to Final Fantasy 16. That's more engaging to me personally, but Rebirth is so goddamn cute, so goddamn wholesome, and it's like, it's cozy. It's much more cozy and charming, and I can appreciate aspects of that as well. So yeah, it's really, and I'm not trying to compare they're both fucking great games. I loved both of them immensely, and I'm not trying to compare them like, one is, you shouldn't check out one versus the other. You should definitely check out both. Honestly, when I come in here, a lot of the time, I'm just sort of sitting and thinking to myself and kind of letting my thoughts run free in this no notes format, which I do have notes wrote down here as well that I probably should look over a little bit more, but I'm so fresh on this game. It's like I would just rather sort of vamp and just free flow, let my thoughts fly out of my damn brain and onto your screen there. So I hope that this rambly nature to this review for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth wasn't too incoherent. But yeah, man, overall, I did enjoy the game a good bit. I ran it at the quality mode. I didn't run it at performance. I heard a lot of issues about performance, that running it at 60 frames per second kind of lost a lot of the beauty in the world. So I ran it at quality, and I think the game is beautiful, especially in terms of, like I said, in terms of interior design. The game is fucking beautiful in some of those moments, and just some of the location design in general. But in terms of like character models and this hyper photorealistic experience, like, it's really not trying to be that. And I actually appreciate that, because I would imagine that this game wasn't, I'm not trying to predict the budget for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but I would imagine this game didn't cost $300 million to make. But it's just jam-packed with content that is fun and replayable and engaging and rewarding, and these things that don't really feel necessary to have hundreds of millions of dollars poured into it, because you're just having so much fun with this baked in foundation, this baked in format. And you're cool with you're also cool with, you're not getting this Horizon Forbidden West looking world, or this Forza Horizon 5 looking world, or Cyberpunk 2077 character model. You're not getting that, but it is so stylized. Like, it has a distinct art style in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth that I'm really able to appreciate. But yeah, man, I'll go ahead and quit rambling about Rebirth. I have quite a few other games I got to get to here. For an overall score for Rebirth, I would say I'm somewhere around probably 8.7, I would say. But let's go from my one obvious Game of the Year candidate to my not so obvious Game of the Year candidate that I did not expect to be nearly as good as it is, and that is Lil Guardsman. So this is just a narrative choose your own adventure game where you're playing as this little girl who is guarding a gate to this castle, to this royal city of sorts, and you are making decisions. Your dad's kind of a bit of a, I don't know if I want to say deadbeat. Early on, I would definitely say he presents himself as a deadbeat. And he is the security guard who is tasked with enforcing code at the gate for who enters and who is denied entry into this gated community. And he wants to go gambling. and wants to take the day off. So you are taking his role at the guard shack, and it's your job to interrogate people and find out who is qualified, I guess, to enter into this royal castle community. Horrible description there, but it's essentially an interrogation game. Kind of think of like LA Noire, where you are looking for quirks in these different characters' personality and quirks in how these characters will react to questions that you ask them. And you have a bunch of different tools where you have like a metal detector, and you have a fucking whip. You have a damn x-ray machine where you can like see the skeleton of these different characters and see if they're carrying anything on their person into this gated community. You have a truth serum thing that you can use. It's so outlandish, so fun, and fantastical. And you are dealing with a lot of fantastical creatures, vampires, and, zombies and shit later on in the game, as well as these royal esteemed warriors and politicians and jesters. And you have just a crazy cast of characters. The voice acting is damn good. The writing is so solid, because after you either, provide entry or deny these different characters from getting into the community, you have a text box that appears at the end of the level and kind of lets you know what the future held for these characters that you either allowed to enter or denied. And a lot of your decisions, without spoiling anything, can very much impact the end of the game. It is one of those games where like your decisions have a ripple effect on the, middle and end of the game, because there is this key moment in the middle of Lil Guardsman where the game becomes something entirely different. And I don't want to spoil that, but I will say the stakes get extremely, extremely high. And while you're maybe playing a similar role, you're doing a very different thing with very different consequences, and the ramifications are on a totally different level. And I guess I should bring up a key mechanic into the game that's introduced early on that's not really a spoiler at all, is there's a time travel component to Lil Guardsman. You meet this like scientist lady, and she has a time travel device, and you can use that where if you permit someone entry, you allow someone to enter into the community, and you think, damn, I shouldn't have done that. You can use your time travel device to go back to the beginning of the interrogation and to search them better or question them better, and maybe find if they're bringing something, like they're bringing a bomb or a sword or something that they're not allowed to bring into the community. You can find these things by making different decisions in the interrogation process, and that could potentially take the story down a different path, and you might have a better outcome overall. And they got like a star system set up that grades you on how you're doing at the shack. If you're following rules, you have Lieutenant Stryker, and then you have the Jester guy, and you have these different kind of council members that you can call on, and you can ask them questions. Like if someone comes up to the gate and they say, hey, the queen sent for me, I'm supposed to be here at this time, and I need to get in really quickly. You can call these different council members and see if they're on the board, if they're allowed immediate entry or whatever the case may be. So it's really goddamn fun. It's really silly. It's one of the very few games that constantly made me laugh out loud. And I'm not saying like belly laugh, but constant little chuckles. It's such a cute, well-written game. And I also love that at certain times throughout the game, you have to make very quick, gut-based, instinctual reactions where you don't have time to call someone. You don't really have time to prepare or interrogate as much as you would like, and you have to just go with your gut. And those moments to me are some of the highlights of the game, because it really does feel like you're putting all your money on red or putting all your money on black and just hoping to God that things turn out the correct way, which once again, you do have the time travel device that sort of allows you to correct a lot of decisions, but you have a limited amount of use with that. I think there's 5 per level that you can use. And I will say that it's more than enough for the majority of levels to go smoothly. But midway through the game, like I said, not to spoil anything, you will make some mistakes that you can't take back, and you can't really, once you leave the guard shack, that's the rule of the time travel devices. Once you leave the guard shack, you can't use the time travel to go back a day. You can only like use it to go back to the beginning of your guard duty or to the beginning of an interrogation. So anytime you're out in the world, or you know, you're back at home, and that's the other thing, it's like a little adventure game. There's this map that pops up like an overworld map, and you can go, and they have this big ass stadium where they play a silly kind of soccer-ish, basketball-ish game, and you can go and bet on those games. And there's even one point where you can change the name of the stadium. The character asks you, what do you think the name of the stadium should be? And you make this stupid decision, and it actually reflects that later on in the game. They pick the decision that you made to like name the stadium something else. It's really cool, man. It's a really, really fun game. One that I did not expect to like nearly as much as I do. For an overall score, man, I would say, listen, it's so hard, you know. I just gave Final Fantasy VII Rebirth a 8.7 out of 10. And if I'm looking at this, if I'm grading this in terms of what I think more people would enjoy, of course, more people would probably enjoy Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I would say they're very, very damn close to me. Like, very, very close to me in terms of my personal enjoyment. Lil Guardsman is a 7-ish hour narrative, choose your own adventure game, point and click game of sorts. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is this epic 40-hour hack and slash meets turn-based RPG, meets mini games galore, meets set pieces galore. It's a lot different. It's a whole hell of a lot different. But I would say in terms of enjoyment, they're kind of on equal footing for me. So I'll give Lil Guardsman a 8.6. But I don't know. In my heart of hearts, I really don't know if I can honestly say I enjoyed Final Fantasy VII Rebirth more than Lil Guardsman. Do I appreciate it a little bit more? Maybe. But enjoyment? I honestly don't know. But before we get into another epic narrative adventure, let's talk about Tekken 8. I played through the story in Tekken 8, which I shouldn't say it's not an epic narrative adventure. The story in Tekken 8 was so cool. This had some of the most crazy, grandiose set pieces, and it looks like a expensive as video game, from the character modeling to just how insane some of the cinematics are in Tekken 8. Like, you just see that this game had a real deal budget. And I haven't played a Tekken game since the PS1 era, and even then I really just dabbled. Like, I never played Tekken in the way that I played Mortal Kombat, and I have no idea what the hell's going on with Tekken lore. Throughout this entire game, I had no clue what was taking place, but I was just enamored by the beauty of the game. The whole time while I'm taking in the story, I'm just looking at how goddamn gorgeous this thing is, and basking in the glorious graphics of Tekken 8. And that is the funny thing, where I'm talking about, you know, hoping for the sustainability of the industry and maybe lessening on the graphical importance, or lessening on the technical horsepower, and hoping that we can go more towards a stylized, artistic focus that costs maybe less than these hyper realistic graphical showpieces of today, which Tekken 8 is definitely. It's super stylized and has its own distinct flavor, no doubt about that at all, but it is still fucking just a technical powerhouse, dude. And I'll also say, since getting back into the fighting game mix with, you know, picking up MK1 and Street Fighter 6 last year, Tekken 8 is for sure, even though I don't know what the hell is going on in the story, it was for sure the best of these three narrative, you know, fighting game experiences. I would say by a good margin. And yeah, without a doubt, it's mostly because of the spectacle, but also it just had real good consistency. And even though I'm trying to catch up, I felt like I could catch up somewhat well, and there was like at least some consistency to the plot. Whereas with MK1, as beautiful and just technically impressive as that game is, when it, you know, is MK1 the reboot, I'm thinking, but it's still directly tied to the last two games in the Mortal Kombat franchise. So it's like, how much of a reboot is it really, and it felt very hard to follow along with when it made that pivot midway through the game. And it's so funny, it's like I was more confused after finishing Mortal Kombat 1 than I was after playing the 8th game in a series that I have not followed along with whatsoever. But I'll also say this was definitely the hardest of the 3 games as well. It took me quite some time to even have a basic understanding, and I was playing the shit on easy. I could not really come to grips with how to get up to speed with Tekken 8's combat system, and I ended up, just going with the very simple controls for the casual players like myself. But with Mortal Kombat 1, I started that off on like the easiest difficulty, and I ended up getting to the point where I could play through it on normal. And then with Street Fighter 6, I think it only had the normal difficulty for the story. And yeah, in Tekken 8, I played it on easy, and I was still struggling pretty much up until the end of the game. I shouldn't say struggling like to the point where I was dying a bunch or anything, or losing fights or anything. It was just like to the point where I was real low on health at the end of pretty much all of like the major epic final battles and shit. Which I guess that's kind of the thing that you want. You know what I mean? Like, you want a challenging battle. Even if you're a casual player, you want to kind of try to understand the systems and mechanics and shit. And yeah, I was damn challenged playing Tekken 8 on the easy difficulty. But also, I thought the damn tutorial here was awful. How they set up everything in the tutorial at the very beginning of the game, and they really don't, like with Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter 6, they don't throw everything at you at once. You get a little bit here and a little bit later and a little bit later. With Tekken 8, it felt like they throw every mechanic that is in this game at you at once, and it's just like, here you go. Read through these tutorials, and it's not like an active tutorial where you're not actively doing the moves that they're trying to teach you. It's just like reading text and then on to the next. #bars. But I will say one mechanic that I fucking love in Tekken 8 is the head bob move. That shit is so sick, where you're able to like bob your head as if you're, a goddamn Roy Jones Jr. And I also love the heat system. When you activate the heat system, and it really encourages an offensive strategy to your fighting, because these attacks that would previously be blockable, you can now do chip damage to the opponent even while they're while they're blocking. And I just like the damn the Iron Fist tournament, where you get to choose your fighters in this tournament, and then at one point in the game, way later on, it becomes not a 3D fighter, but some sort of 3D fighting taking place in this 3D plane of sorts, and you're battling on these soldiers in this Avengers in-game style battle. It's just a crazy spectacle. And those two moments, the Iron Fist tournament, I believe is what it's called, where you get to pick your pick the character that you're going to play as and go up against the different opponents, and they all have their own special moves, and you're getting to kind of mess around with a bunch of different characters. I thought that was such a fun way to sort of, for newcomers to realize who they might prefer to play as. And I mean, dude, the ending, once again, on a technical level, you're seeing the goddamn particle effects and the I don't want to, I guess I'll talk very, very lightly, but it's like this storm of sorts that you're seeing in the background, and it just, holy shit, man. It is a spectacle. And I know I've used that word 152 times today, but man, the ending of Tekken 8 is one of the most impressive moments of the generation on a purely technical level. It is fucking crazy, dude. But yeah, I'm glad that I've recently gone back to Street Fighter and Tekken and Mortal Kombat, and now I kind of have an idea of what I will be picking up moving forward. And then I think I definitely will be following along with Tekken and trying to get up to speed more on that story arc. And with Mortal Kombat, I'll definitely be jumping back in, and I'll probably end up going back and playing the other two Mortal Kombat games that MK1's story is directly attached to. And Street Fighter, I'll probably pass on Street Fighter games unless the next one just has a fucking crazy, crazy story. Because that's really what I want. I want a real good story with, solid voice acting and I want a real great story from the fighting games. I don't have any interest in going through and doing the competitive shit and all that. Like, I could care less about any of that. But Mortal Kombat, I thought, for the most part, until it veered off totally off the rails midway through the game, I thought it had a good story. The presentation for Mortal Kombat was on a different level. Tekken 8, I really enjoyed that story. Street Fighter 6, I thought the story was not good at all. But yeah, definitely going forward, I will be following along with the future of Mortal Kombat and Tekken. I'm not going to give like a review score to Tekken 8. I have no idea how the fuck to review fighting games. I enjoyed it immensely, but I'm not the right guy to come to for fighting game reviews. But next up, let's talk about Banishers Ghost of New Eden, another epic third-person action-adventure narrative game, and this thing was a juggernaut. I was not expecting this to be anywhere near as big or as polished as it was. It took me probably 20 hours to get through Banishers Ghost of New Eden, and kind of similar to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I don't think it was, like, it felt like 20 hours, a deserved 20-hour experience, which if you guys that know me know, I'm that's typically not a sentiment that I share widely. I think most games should probably cut some of the fat, but crazy, for both of these big ass games, it didn't feel like there was a ton of fat on either of them. So, like I said, Banishers Ghost of New Eden, it's from Don't Nod, the creators of Life is Strange, the creators of Jasant and Vampire, and they are a very prolific developer. And there's been some rumors, some speculation, some reports that the work culture for Don't Nod isn't in the greatest place currently. I have no idea the validity to these claims, but they've been very active, so I wouldn't really doubt it. But I gotta say that this is a fucking good game. This is a really good game. If you like God of War, but you want to play in this 17th century colonial setting, and playing as like some ghost hunters in a more macabre, kind of spooky environment, this is the game. This is the game for you. I'm not saying it is as mechanically rich as something like God of War. It doesn't play as good as something like God of War, but if you want a double A version of that, and once again, what I kind of hope the industry can spin off into, don't get me wrong, I love big, beautiful, spectacle video games. I've talked about it 100 times in this video alone, but if this version of AA that's attempting to be AAA, if this is more sustainable, then I'm all for this future. I will say, I do definitely worry about Banisher's performance on a commercial level. I don't really hear many people talking about it. I think it came out at a rough time, which, I know it got delayed out of 2023 because that was a rough time. And it was like, it seems like really no time in the last few months is going to be a good time to release a game, especially if it's not a known quantity, a new release in a franchise. But this is one I would not overlook, man. And like I said, you're playing as these two ghost hunters. It's actually technically called Banishers in the game. Banishers Ghost of New Eden. And your job is to banish these ghosts. They're kind of stuck in limbo, in between the living world and the dead. And your job is to banish these ghosts back to the realm of the dead. Because as they're in the land of the living, they're kind of fucking up the land of the living, and they need to go back to the land of the dead. But early in the game, and this isn't a spoiler, this is in the trailers, your wife gets killed while trying to banish one of these spirits. And in this process, you're met with a really weighty decision that you have to make. My job as a banisher, and what I've been told and what I know, is that I need to send these spirits back to the realm of the dead. That's where they belong. They're no longer living, but they're staying in the realm of the living. and they're not peacefully coexisting, and then they mess up the natural balance to the realm of the living. So I know what I probably need to do is send my wife back to the land of the dead. But you face your moral decision there, along with your decision of one of a husband and one of deep, emotional connection. And you don't necessarily have that emotional connection to all of these other ghosts that you're sending back to the land of the dead. And then you don't really have that investment in these different characters. So it's easier to dismiss them. And you know of this ritual that if you are able to sacrifice a certain number of spirits to restore your wife's spirit, and you could possibly bring her back to life with this ritual if you have sacrificed enough of these different spirits. But the conundrum comes in there, where at times you might have to do that to living people as well. So you might have to kill living people and sacrifice their spirit to, build up this ability or possibility to resurrect your wife, to bring her back to life, to take this spirit that's in limbo in between the land of the living and land of the dead. When as a banisher, you should, push them to where they belong, back to the land of the dead. But you're so deeply connected, do you try to, sacrifice as many spirits as possible and as many even people as possible, killing potentially innocent civilians to bring your life back, to conjure enough spirit to restore your wife's spirit. And I probably did a horrible job of explaining that on the fly here, but I'm telling you, it plays out really, really cool. And there's a bunch of interesting decisions of, these people that you would presume are somewhat innocent. And that's the thing. Most people in this world aren't totally innocent or totally guilty. You do run into people who are obviously totally guilty, and those are the easier decisions to make if you want to go down that path of trying to restore your wife's spirit, trying to resurrect her. Some of those decisions can be easy, and they present those to you because they want that carrot on the stick. There's like, oh, well, if it's just going to be people like this, then yeah, I'll fucking sacrifice all these bitches and bring my wife back to life. But it becomes much, much more difficult than that. And thankfully for me, it really wasn't at all, because I just imagined that, okay, there's no way that this is going to end well if I'm bringing back this damn spirit from the, they're in limbo. I should probably send them back to the land of the dead. They got killed. That's probably where they belong to be. I don't think messing with the natural chemistry, the natural balance of this realm is really going to benefit anybody in any real way. So I went with that decision. I won't spoil how it turns out or anything, but, yeah, so, but you still, it is kind of the Renegade Paragon dilemma of Mass Effect 2 and beyond, where you don't really have, I personally prefer more of a Witcher 3 style, where there's quite a few different options, and it's not just trying to choose good or bad, but the way that they set this up is so interesting, where it's not really good or bad per se. It's your motive. You're focusing on your own personal motive and what path you want to go down in terms of, saving your wife or banishing her, sending her back to the realm of the dead. And so you feel a little bit more of an emotional investment, even though it is limited in the choice. Like, you don't get a bunch of different dialogue options or anything like that. It's usually you're picking in between, 2 or 3 options, 3 options at max usually. But yeah, like I said, from a gameplay standpoint, from a combat standpoint, it's straight up Diet God of War. It plays almost identically to God of War. It looks very similar to God of War, even from the UI setup. A lot of the upgrades feel similar. It's very God of War inspired, obviously. Even, just the traversal and how the character moves around. It is very 2018 and Ragnarok inspired in terms of its just gameplay structure altogether. It's not on that level by any means. It's way, way easier than God of War 2018 or God of War Ragnarok, which I don't think is a bad thing by any means. It's much more focusing on the narrative and trying to build that out, opposed to making this incredibly rich combat experience that's just enthralling from front to back. And to be fair, I just played it on the normal difficulty, so I don't know, maybe if you bumped it up to hard, it could become like this challenging experience. If that's something that you're looking for out of the game, maybe you could get that from Banishers. But they do a good job of introducing new weapons. You get a rifle that you can use, and it's, you know, it takes quite a while to reload it because obviously you're talking 17th century. It's not, you know, it's not taking you fucking 10 minutes to reload it or whatever, but you have this rifle that's slow to reload, but there's cool systems in place where you can upgrade your wife's ability. She has like her own ability tree, and I guess I should mention that you can use her in combat and like immediately swap to your wife or swap back to the main character. His name is Red, and then the wife's name is Antia, I believe. And Antia, she is more of an up close. She's more of like a boxer. And Red is more of a hacker, a slasher, a Kratos style character. And then he also has the rifle. But like I said, you have these upgrade trees. And one of the cool upgrades is that you can upgrade it to where your wife has the ability to where if you switch to her, and if you pull off this quick dodge maneuver that inflicts some sort of damage, you like dodge into the enemies, or I guess dash into the enemies. You inflict this damage, and then if you switch back to your character quickly, you can have a automatically reloaded shot in your rifle. So there's a cool dynamic where they want you to mix match combos with these characters, and they give you rewards that incentivize you to experiment and play with both characters. And there's also like these light Metroidvania. I know that term is way overused, but it just kind of fits. There are light Metroidvania elements to this world where the world it's like an open hub. Not quite open world, but open world-ish elements to it, more hub levels where there are inaccessible locations, and throughout the game you're going to unlock abilities specifically with Antia that will allow you to, you know, remove these barriers and will allow you to explore a little bit more if you want to go back through the world and kind of backtrack and use your newfound powers to unlock these previously inaccessible locations and go and open up chests and find little hidden rewards and shit like that, or, you know, small minor stories. And I guess I shouldn't really call them small side quests. There are some pretty fucking great side quests in this game as well. Like I said, I haven't finished all the side quests. I put about 20 hours into it. I would imagine you can probably get about 35 hours out of this game if you wanted to go and do every side quest and find every single haunting case and go and do all that. You could probably actually get quite a bit more time out of the game if you wanted to go off and find everything and every collectible. And yeah, man, it was a really fun experience. Like I said earlier, the combat's not absolutely incredible. The shooting's not absolutely incredible. It's just like it's a less high quality version of other really high quality games, but it's in that realm. It's enough to scratch that itch if you're fiending for something like a God of War. Of course, the character models aren't on that AAA level. The lip sync at times can be pretty god awful, but other times it's crazy because it is this tale of two games at times. Sometimes you're seeing like the water physics and shit. You'll see the rain coming down and it's landing on the clothing of these characters, and you see like the water meshing into the cloth, and it's a very realistic sort of, probably the most realistic, well, I don't know, Last of Us 2 probably has the most realistic rain blending into clothing technology. What the fuck technology is that? But whatever that is, I guess Tilu 2 would be the goat, the king there. But there's some moments where it's like, damn, they're pushing the hardware. This really feels like a next gen experience. I feel like we gotta quit calling shit next gen at this point. It feels like a current gen experience. And then at other times the characters just look god awful, lip syncs all over the place, and you know, some of this stuff maybe could be patched up, but I do think a lot of it is just they don't have fucking $300 million to throw at their game like a God of War Ragnarok. So they made do with the budget they had, and I think they pulled off something really, really fucking cool here. For an overall score, I would say I'd put this somewhere around like a 8.2, 8.3 or so. Really fun game. Enjoyed the shit out of it. Would I recommend it at full price right now? Maybe not, but I would say, you know, $40, $50, I would definitely recommend jumping in around that price point. I think well, specifically if you're into this style of game, which this is my favorite genre of video game. I'm not crazy about God of War, but, and I will say, like, I enjoy this story much more than the God of War stories. So to say it's diet God of War in terms of the combat and making those comparisons, and I know comparisons are the thief of joy, as they say, but if I'm making that comparison and putting this below God of War in terms of the combat, I would say I like the story here more than both 2018 God of War and Ragnarok. So take that for what you will. I enjoyed the game a whole hell of a lot. I think if you're into the third-person action-adventure, narrative-rich experiences, this is definitely one worth checking out, no doubt about it. And I gotta say, another pretty damn big surprise for me. Granblue Fantasy System Relink. I have zero knowledge of the Granblue Fantasy world, but I saw a trailer of this game and I saw like there was some, I don't know if platforming is the right word, but there was just some cool looking exploration and some cool looking locations being shown in the trailer. And I was like, I gotta check this damn thing out. I gotta see what's going on here. And once again, this thing really delivered. Pretty much everything on the list here, I was, other than, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I expected that to be good, and it was, but everything else here, I was pleasantly surprised by, and Granblue Fantasy System Relink is no different. Maybe my least favorite of all the games we've talked about here today so far, but, what the fuck does that even mean? My least favorite of a bunch of really, really good to great games, like, that's a fine company to be in. But yeah, man, I really enjoyed the flavor of this game. I thought it had a real distinct art style. It was real charming. Another cozy experience. The, cast members that you have. I don't think the story is great in Granblue Fantasy System Relink, but I do think, when you get to some of these hub levels and you're just kind of walking around and exploring and looking up, and it just, the art style jumps off the screen. It's very, very, it's a beautiful, beautiful game. But, talking about the story, I do think that, I don't think it's great storytelling or anything even close to that. You see the ending coming from a mile away. They telegraph this shit out in the open, as obvious as can be. But you like the characters, they're charming. You get to go and add new crewmates to your roster throughout the game, and it's unfortunate that you can swap characters, but you have to pick a main character. So it's not like a Final Fantasy VII remake structure where you can instantly swap to all your different characters. You have to select a main character and kind of stick with that character, but you can change out the main character. So if you want to play as different party members and use their skills and abilities, you can do that. And they all do have distinct, different skills and abilities for each character. So it is fun to go in and mess around with all of your different party members and control each of them. And it does play, similar to Final Fantasy VII in that real-time action-oriented combat, and even leans into it a little bit more. It kind of goes into somewhere of the hacky and slashy territory with less emphasis on the strategic elements of selecting through different menu screens and stuff. The skills, I believe, are you press R1 and then you can select from, triangle, circle, square, X. They all do something different. And that's really where your primary strategy is going to come from in terms of the more menu-based actions. But it's cool. There's like environmental attacks you can perform, like a big-ass fucking icicle that's sitting there. You can go and hack away at this big-ass icicle and have it topple over onto the enemies. And it's just a simple, fun, chill, laid-back, action-based JRPG with a decent enough cast of characters, fun little set pieces where, a bridge is collapsing and you're having to run and jump and do some light platforming elements to reach your destination and get to safety and not fall to your death. There's a moment where you're on this big ass pirate ship and you're battling oncoming pirates and trying to, disengage and trying to dismantle their different artillery. You're trying to dismantle their firepower. You're boarding their ship and trying to take it over and prevent them from destroying your ship that they're firing at. But yeah, man, it's a pretty fun game. I'm not going to dive super deep into it. I enjoyed it for what it was. Like I said, not the greatest story in the world, but a fun enough combat system, charming enough characters, beautiful world. I'll give it a solid 7.9. Yeah, man, that is everything that I have been playing as of late. The 2024 games are coming in abundance right now. We got 2K24 on the horizon, WWE 2K24 that's getting really damn good reviews, so I'm excited to check out that My Rise mode and the Showcase mode, and maybe dabble a little bit in the GM mode as well. Of course, we got Dragon's Dogma 2 that's getting glowing previews right now. People talking about another Game of the Year candidate right there with DD2, Rise of the Ronin on the same day. And then we have a little bit of a lull, I believe, until Stellar Blade. And I'm also, damn, Pacific Drive. I was really excited to check that out. And when I first got the game, I thought it said that the physical copy came out on the same day that the digital release, which was February 22nd or some shit. And that's not the case. The damn physical copy comes out in April, while the digital copy came out February 22nd or whatever date it launched at, which isn't the biggest deal in the world. Obviously, there's tons of shit to play, but it's like, I wish it could have been me that fucked that up. I could have misread something or misremembered something, but I'm almost positive it said that the physical launched the same day as the digital, but it is what it is. I'm just happy that smaller scale games like that are still getting physical copies. Banisher got a physical copy. Granblue got a physical copy. So yeah, I'm just happy that some publishers are still committed to physical releases, even if it takes a couple months or even a year, whatever. I'll happily wait. I'm looking at you, Alan Wake 2, Remedy, Epic. But yeah, man, I appreciate you good people for tuning in. Appreciate y'all for stopping by, and I hope y'all enjoyed the video. If you did, drop a like, drop a comment. All that good shit helps out the channel, pushes it into the old algorithm, and yeah, helps me out greatly. So I appreciate you guys, and I will see you good people in the next episode. Goodbye.